GameStop has never been the pinnacle of consumer respect. The store provided a service, to be sure, but nicknames like PawnStop or ScamStop are more indicative of their actual street-level reputation among a great many gamers. Recently, I did a segment called The Great Tragedy of GameStop, discussing how their share price has fallen some 93% in 5 years, how they are scraping the bottom edge in terms of price, far lower even than the Depression of 2008, and how with a net loss of 600 plus million last fiscal year, they are circling the drain. The reasons for this are plentiful. Digital distribution, publishers are pushing for more online retail direct through their own storefronts, or a variety of other pressure points, but the effect is obvious. Changing retail consumer habits are putting strain on GameStop's existing business model. They do not operate as a franchise, they have been closing mass numbers of stores, and now, not to say that it is anything close to positive before this, but now their reputation has become flat out radioactive as they endeavor to stay open and pad their balance sheet during the current pandemic. Since my video regarding GameStop's progressive decline over the past few years, and the video about how they pretended to be essential retail to avoid mandated shutdown and asked their employees to quite literally argue with local police in the event they tried to come and close their operations, since those videos came out, I've had multiple GameStop managers and employees reach out to me. For those that weren't aware of the previous stories, because of the many shelter-in-place orders and the mass closure of businesses to stop the spread of demonetized virus, I make a joke about demonetization, but YouTube is only just now rolling out measures to stop videos from getting nuked from orbit if they even say the name of the disease, and I have no idea where that stands, so I'm not going to say it, just for safety reasons, but back on task. As businesses close to stop the spread and employees stay home, with schools out of session and nothing to do, video game sales are through the roof. If there is one thing this whole scenario has done, it is exposed the darker side of certain companies and figures. From senators who offload their entire stock portfolio after a secret meeting about the coming danger while outwardly assuring the public everything is fine, things are great, bye bye bye. We all kind of knew this already, that the behavior existed, but never had examples of it that are this glaringly obvious, all the way to companies skirting public health and safety measures to boost their margins, such as GameStop. The current pandemic is a window into the unflinchingly profit-driven underbelly of American society to a degree of clarity above and beyond what we normally see. For better or for worse, it is extremely eye-opening. In a leaked GameStop regional conference call, employees are clearly distressed. GameStop says that they are now trying to get sanitary supplies out to them next week, at a point well and truly after the lockdown of most areas has commenced. Executives are almost gleefully referring to the store as a hot location during this crisis because their business has increased by a multiple of 3, probably 4, if the estimates I've received are even close to correct, and the atmosphere is without question devolving into profit over people. Those people being customers and employees alike. GameStop, having booked a loss recently and clearly struggling, seized upon the opportunity to salvage what they can from this quarter, and flat out tried to argue that they are essential retail, asked employees to argue with police, forced them to continue accepting trade-ins despite employee fear and reprehension, continued with launch releases despite warnings by the CDC and other agencies regarding crowded gatherings, and finally had certain stores closed down by governor mandate, with their license to operate a retail location canceled for the time being in specific states after their continued refusal to abide by these warnings. But all of that has not stopped them. One common theme that has been popping up again and again in my private conversations with GameStop managers and employees is fear. They fear what corporate will do to them if it is found out that they spoke to me in any capacity, and they do not want to lose their jobs. Because of this, I can't really show a lot of specific material or talk too in-depth about any individual store or instance, but a few things have since come to light that yet again put GameStop in the crosshairs of public disapproval as they horrifically fail the intrinsic balancing act of maximum profit versus customer opinion. Articles are now pretty much everywhere which outline how GameStop has become a curbside pickup retail operation only. This is company-wide and being enforced by powers far above GameStop themselves. The process is rather abstract and also confusing, but fairly precise. Customers must call ahead, and that is imperative, by the way, company-wide. They must call. They cannot go to the door and execute the orders that way. They must call ahead, place an order, pick it up, and hand their credit cards through the door to an employee, because no customers are ever allowed inside. The specification of credit card only, as far as I've been told, is also company-wide, and I'm not 100% sure as to why, but it could revolve around the issue of cash refunds, seeing as there is a simultaneous order to delay cash refunds and cash acceptance until a few weeks from now, possibly longer. Here's the big part. Since GameStop has been the epicenter of a brutal lack of preparedness, especially relating to cleaning supplies and procedures, for instance, as cleaning videos were being shown on their in-store screens, they simultaneously did not even have the supplies to do what was being claimed they were doing. From a top down corporate perspective, there were procedures being advertised that were physically impossible, while low level employees were being told to bring their own cleaning supplies because nothing was being provided. There is more evidence of this in their leaked conference call, which has now made its way onto the internet to be archived forever. But above all of this is the shock factor protocol, as a result of having no surgical or latex gloves provided to staff, of asking employees to wrap their hands in plastic bags to accept products through the door as the curbside pickup remains open. This reality is almost dystopian, hands wrapped in plastic bags because lack of supplies, or more likely corporate incompetence, has impacted the employees, while the business remains open to boost the bottom line revenue reports. Focusing in further, I have now heard that in certain locations, managers are being asked to put tape squares on the ground outside their stores to keep customers back at a safe distance. However, when we harken back to the leaked conference call, this is in direct contradiction to that. During that conference call, in response to a manager's rightful criticism of their policy to stay open in such a capacity, an unnamed executive said directly, "You cannot control what customers do outside the doors. That's not your responsibility. That is not your focus. Your focus is controlling what happens inside the store." But flying in the face of that directly, the idea of putting tape lines down outside the storefront is a direct order to control what customers are doing beyond the doors. GameStop is executing a very impactful trade right now, which is the trade of customer opinion for monetary gain. This is a trade ratio often played with by large corporations. How much can you squeeze and when do you stop? If you squeeze too hard and prioritize profit to an extreme degree, you deal long-lasting damage to your reputation, which impacts the company in future quarters. If you don't squeeze hard enough, if you only think of customer value, once in a while it can work if you become the pinnacle of customer goodwill and receive blowout business because of that, but most often for publicly traded companies it leads to missed expectations and shareholder or investor anger. GameStop was not doing a good job of balancing that equation already, but these recent choices have pushed them far over the edge. I'm not here to say that they can't operate their business this way. In fact, generally speaking, if you are to measure the chances of contracting the virus through curbside pickup with a plastic bag over your hand versus ordering takeout food delivered to your door by a driver, the odds are probably honestly similar, or at least close, but the optics on this are terrible. If this had been their immediate choice with proper sanitary equipment, a plentiful supply of gloves to be changed between customers, and a general atmosphere of safety first, then it may have worked in their favor. If they had executed this maneuver much earlier of their own accord without having to be shut down by mandate at a state government level, it might have played fine in the court of public opinion. But instead, they pushed until the government slapped them across the face. They are still failing to provide adequate equipment to their employees, and now they tell their employees to wrap plastic bags around their hands like some sort of post-apocalyptic pandemic drug deal. The only explanation I can fathom, though keep in mind this is pure speculation right now, is that their solvency period is extremely short. There are some metrics floating around right now about how long of a buffer period certain industries have while in full shutdown mode. For the food industry, it is a little over 2 weeks, I think, for example. And generally speaking, for small businesses entirely, if I recall correctly, it is in the vicinity of 26 days. For large businesses, this is expected to be much longer or much larger, but in the case of GameStop, it actually might not be. GameStop has a somewhat cyclical operating model as of right now to begin with. After console generations come out, they see a massive uptick in revenue. Most people go to GameStop to buy their consoles, although in the age of Amazon that's probably changing, but that's a whole different topic. But towards the end of that natural cycle, in the lead up to whatever next iteration is planned, they struggle. This year it seems to be particularly bad, and with Sony and Microsoft on the cusp of releasing their next models, there is a definite light at the end of the tunnel for them. GameStop may be able to innovate on its existing business model given a couple more years. They would need to fundamentally change, but it's definitely possible. So getting through these coming 6 months to a year, depending on delays, is crucial for them. It is entirely possible that the sales spike they see right now from customer boredom and school cancellations will propel them to a position where they can reach the new hardware generation. And it could be that this motivation is what has caused them to torch their public reputation with such ferocity. That is speculation. Again, it is. I don't know for a fact. But when a business that is clearly struggling, booking losses and faltering at every turn, makes it such a priority to defy government policy, keep retail locations open and capitalize on a growth spike while other retail enterprises around them are perfectly able and willing to shut down so as to not eviscerate their approval ratings, the question is worth asking, why are they doing it? Is it standard greed, like always, or flat out desperation? Personally, I am leaning towards pure desperation. GameStop is replacing one lethal poison for another. On the one hand, closing completely would see a wave of customer demand wiped out with no possible mitigation. On the other hand, staying open has led to widespread boycotts and an impression of corporate greed that will not evaporate anytime soon. Right now, people are buying out of desperation. That is true. What else is there to even do right now? It's the thought process for many families, honestly. The kids are home, they have nothing to do, video games. But when all this is over, when the lockdown ends, and it will end eventually, it will happen, when the true ramifications are felt and the novelty of, oh wow, some time off has disappeared, for many it's been gone for a while now, when the kids are back at school and the gears begin to grind once again, people will remember GameStop's actions, and that is when these choices will catch up to them. I don't ultimately know what will come of it all, but GameStop is quite clearly making choices that do not sit well with their own staff, their employees, their customers, and even the government. In a time of chaos, I call that triple jeopardy, and not the good kind of triple jeopardy, the actual really bad, risky kind. But that's it. If you want to support, there are links down below. Special merch, discounted for a few more days, and another 15% off with code UE15%. Also Patreon, Twitter, other social media, and another YouTuber named AxialGT, who I'll be collaborating with on a project in the very near future. Please support him. But I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.